Divine Grace, Shilabhai Charan Arvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, ISKCON's BBD founder, Acharya Jagaguru, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Antakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagna Ki Jai, Shishi Radha Govinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanandi Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Bhaskita Deshatagane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. Text 39. Bhavishyatas Tava Bhadrav Abhadre Jataradamo Lokan Sapalams Trims Chandi Ur Akrandayish Yata Bhavishyatas Tava Bhadrav Abhadre Jatarada Abhadre Jataradamo Lokan Sapalams Trims Chandi Ur Akran Dayisyata Vishyatas Tava Bhadrav Abhadre Jataradamo Lokan Sapalams Trims Chandi Ur Akran Dayisyata
Bhavishyatas-tava Bhadra Abhadre Jataradamo
Lokan Saphalam Trims Chandi
Lokan Saphalam
Akrandayishta
Bhavishyatas-tava Bhadra Abhadre Jataradamo Lokan Saphalam Trims Chandi Muhur Akran
Bhavishyatas-tava Bhadra Abhadre Jataradhamo Lokan Saphalam Trims Chandi Muhu Akrandayishyata
Bhavishyatas-tava Bhadra
Bhagavad Gita.
Abhadre Jataradhamo Lokan Saphalam Trims Chandi
Lokan Saphalam Trims Chandi
Muhur Akrandayishyata
Bhavishyatas-tava Jataradhamo Sukam Sapalam Chindanandi Murakandayishyata
Bhavishyatas will take birth. Tava, your. Abhadro, two contemptuous sons. Abhadre, O unlucky one. Jatara Adamo, born of a condemned womb. Lokan, all planets. Sapalan, with their rulers. Trin, three. Chandi, haughty one. Muhu, constantly. Akran Dayisyataha, will cause lamentation. O haughty one, you will have two contemptuous sons born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the three worlds. Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Contemptuous sons are born of the condemned womb of their mother. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse 40, it is said, when there is deliberate negligence of the regulative principles of religious life, the women as a class become polluted, and as a result, there are unwanted children. This is especially true for boys. If the mother is not good, there cannot be good sons. The learned Kasyapa could foresee the character of the sons who would be born of the condemned womb of Diti. The womb was condemned because of the mothers being too sexually inclined, thus transgressing all the laws and injunctions of the scriptures. In a society where such women are predominant, one should not expect good children. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unlitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapidam Nina Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadanti Ham Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Rapadalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakavitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vivishitastava Bhadra Vabhadre Jataradamo Lokan Sapalam Strinchandi Muhur Akrandayishyataha. O haughty one, you will have two contemptuous sons born of your womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the three worlds. So, Diti is getting her scorecard. How did she do? Not very good. So, since verse 38, Kasyapa Muni is presenting the actual facts. He continues, they will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. Is it bad? It can't get any worse. We see when the evil, heinous Kamsa heard the omen from the sky, the eighth son, you fool, you're driving the chariot of the woman whose eighth son is going to kill you. So, not only ultimately killing all 8 children, but advised by his demoniac ministers, should kill all the children within 10 days or slightly more of the so-called birth of goddess Durga, which very much impressed Kamsa. And actually that was the trick. Krishna was born and transferred gloriously to the home of Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan. So, advising that to kill Lord Vishnu, we should kill Brahminical culture and all adherents to the Brahminical culture. This will automatically kill Lord Vishnu. So ultimately it's described that they were bringing their certain doom upon themselves. One's lifespan, one's fortune, one's so-called blessings from any other sources are all destroyed when one offends the Vaishnavas, offends the devotees. When there is deliberate negligence of the regulative principles of religious life. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted population. So, this material world is a prison by which the condemned, conditioned souls who've turned away from the reality of life, which is pure, unalloyed, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to Krishna, only motivation, which is not really motivation, spontaneous love, then the illusion of material attraction is solidified, or the iron bars in the prison are made inescapable for the prisoners. Conditions in the prison, secure housing unit, max, supermax, a shackle of sex life, sex attraction. The attraction between man and woman is the basic principle of material life. This attraction sets the stage for all other attachments, which are very difficult and, without devotional service to the Lord, impossible to break. And such an amazing prison that any regular prison, everybody wants to get out. Different prison breaks make for exciting stories, or make for a very dangerous situation to find the dangerous criminals on the loose who will stop at nothing to gain their freedom. But in this prison, no one wants to escape because of the bewilderment of the illusory energy, and because their desire to enjoy separately from Krishna is so strong that it completely bewilders them to understand the consequences of their action. Prabhupada says in one place, so-called scientists and learned men trying to discover things for the advancement of the comfort of human society, but the real problem of life, repeated birth and death, they completely set aside the real problem and concern themselves with other so-called problems. Professor Katofsky in Moscow, Swamiji, at the time of death, everything is finished. There is no next life. And Prabhupada was astounded and amazed and would comment repeatedly about this meeting. Learned professor, and he doesn't even understand that there's a next life. There's a chapter coming in Lord Kapila Dev's instructions towards the end of this canto. The chapter is Adverse Fruit of Activities, reactions of adverse fruit of activities. It describes how the conditioned soul is so overwhelmingly attached, and what happens at the time of death, how he is dragged to the abode of Yamaraj and the terrible conditions and tortures that await, and then movements of the living entity, the next chapter, how he's reborn again, and after being purged of all his sins, going through a natural order of 8,400,000 species of life, ultimately again coming to the human form. And Lord Kapila Dev says, if he again associates with persons who are simply interested in sex life, then he goes to hell as before. So devotees, those who are using their human form of life properly, they're progressing to the ultimate goal of life, which is ultimately to have a direct relationship with Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj, actually, in the scorecard of Diti, she also, because of her immediate after the fact humble regret for her actions and praying for mercy, ultimately the son of the worst son, arguably, Hiranyakashipu, would be the approved Mahabhagavat Prahlad Maharaj, who, practically speaking, makes this whole sordid affair into something glorious. We could say that this ultimately paved the way for the appearance of Prahlad Maharaj, and of course, the supreme protector of all devotees in all dangerous situations. Lord Nrsingadev is here, he is there, he is inside, he is outside, he is the supreme protector. Devotees can always remember this pastime of Lord Nrsingadev appearing to kill the demon Hiranyakashipu, and they will always be freed from all danger. Prahlad Maharaj said, to see Govinda everywhere and everywhere is the ultimate goal of life. This alone is the conclusion of all revealed scriptures. And on that platform of pure devotional service, there is no such thing as sex life. What is the practical purpose of sex life as it's here in this material world is to create a facility for souls to get another birth, get another chance to get it right, to progress to the ultimate goal of life, to be responsible. So therefore, ultimately, only the devotees and those who are following the instructions of Krishna, both for their own sanity and ultimate salvation, not just liberation, but salvation into what is real life, devotional service. But devotees are automatically the welfare protectors of the poor conditioned souls. They're the only ones who can actually do anything good for anyone else. Nobody else can. Prabhupada chastised in April 1977 a so-called sophisticated Western lady at the Pandal. What good will your movement do for the suffering people? We have to solve the problems of hunger and poverty. And Prabhupada said, what good will your compassion do, your so-called compassion do? It's simply like blowing on a boil. A boil is filled with pus and blood and must be pierced and cut off to regain ultimate health. So that is why following the regulative principles of how to engage in proper association with men and women, in proper married life, and having proper children is so important. Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, sex life according to religious principles, that I am. So the purpose is to have good children. And then ultimately, because everything in this material world is temporary, from boyhood to youth to old age, there's only a certain period of one's life where such family activities are appropriate. And at a certain point, everyone must stop and renounce such activities and use the balance of their life to exclusively focus on self-realization. We see this we'll see this coming in the activities of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Who was it? Was it giving class recently and said contrast between two examples. So here's Diti and Kasyapa, and Kardama and Devahuti. Ultimately, the result of that glorious marriage was the appearance as the son of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, Lord Kapila Dev, directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who ultimately, when the husband goes away from home, the son, who is a representative of the father, takes charge of the mother and facilitates and helps her to ultimately achieve perfection in spiritual life. That is shown in the activities of Kapila Dev, instructing his mother, Devahuti. Such instructions were certainly not just meant for Devahuti, but were meant for all of us and for everyone for all time. At the very end of the third canto, the Fall Shruti is the discourse of Lord Kapila Dev with his mother, Devahuti, is so pure that anyone who hears it will go back home, back to Godhead. So we keep all these things in view. What is the ultimate goal of life? And that makes things very, very easy. Because at every step of the way, the scriptures are there to guide us in making the right decisions and correct ascertainment. Actually, in Kapila Dev's first instructions in the chapter 25, the glories of devotional service, he says that when one is engaging in devotional service, then his ability to ascertain becomes more sharp and accurate, and the influence of the material energy becomes very much less upon him. And Prabhupada writes in the purport there, it comes to the point of being practically nil. And we see that in the example of Srila Prabhupada himself. Certainly the material energy, the influence of the illusory energy, Maya, had absolutely no influence over Srila Prabhupada. In fact, Srila Prabhupada, wherever he went and whomever he met, immediately the illusory energy was conspicuous by its absence. Just like Maharaj Ambarish, his devotional service was so strong that Shukadeva Goswami says, for him, the illusory energy could not exhibit her influence before him. She vanished just like a dream. Devotees giving their memories in the following Srila Prabhupada, there's one of the lady disciples, Mataji, what was her name? I forget, but she was one of the World Sankirtan Party, first European and American devotees accompanying Prabhupada in his initial tour of India in 1970, 71. I was filled with, my mind was so disturbed. I had these problems. I had this big problem. It was just so overwhelming. And I came into Srila Prabhupada, and even before I got up from fully offering my obeisances, the problem was completely gone. I didn't even have, I forgot what the problem was, what to say, and I felt completely happy. Gargamuni, he's saying, we always wanted to be around Srila Prabhupada because when we were around Srila Prabhupada, there were no problems. The illusory energy vanished, just like a dream. If the mother is not good, there cannot be good sons. And Prabhupada would say, he meant when Brahmananda was getting initiation, Prabhupada told him to invite his mother, and along with paying obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada directed him to offer obeisances to his mother. And Prabhupada instructed him that whenever you see your mother, so one time he went home to visit in Connecticut, and he's ringing the doorbell, and the mother opens the door, and she looks down, and there he is offering obeisances on the front doorstep. And Brahmananda, he's saying, this is a good practice. It was a good instruction because it broke or put into proper context the relationship. It broke the material attachment. But that Prabhupada said, your mothers must be all very good and pious souls. Otherwise, how could they have you, a devotee, as their son? And we see here Diti getting her scorecard. She was very upset. It is the natural inclination of the mother, of the father, of the parent, that we want to have good children. When Diti heard from her husband that the great souls would be angered by the activities of his sons, she was very anxious. So that ambition to have proper devotee children will be exemplary and more is a very good ambition. And that ambition can be more than just wishful thinking if we actually follow the regulative principles, which are there to safeguard us and bless us with the ultimate fulfillment of our proper desires. Proper desires that an individual has ultimately are meant to be harmonious and beneficial for everyone else. So that is the spiritual world. So we do our level best to practice here, and the attempt to do so in this place where everybody, practically speaking, is doing the opposite, especially in this horrible age of Kali Yuga, which is progressing very rapidly. That is a very high vanguard sign of our sincerity, and Krishna certainly notices that. To remain strong in devotional service despite all provocation and despite all obstacles. Amarendra was present when a question was asked of Srila Prabhupada, how does one show their love for the spiritual master? And he was thinking that the first rung, or the early devotees, they had such an amazing relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Devotees like Brahmananda, Gargamuni, Satsvarup Maharaj, Rupanuga, some of the first joiners. They considered Prabhupada to be just like their father and had very, very intimate relationships. And the so-called newer devotees would look up to them. These are the ones who really have love for Srila Prabhupada. But Srila Prabhupada's answer was was astounding, surprising, and very, very sobering. You show your love for the spiritual master by keeping your vow. You have made vow to the spiritual master, to Krishna, to the Vaishnavas, to the deity before fire, following the regulative principles, to chant 16 rounds. To be a devotee, you keep your vow. So, Vavishyatas tava bhadrav abhadre jataradamo lokan sapalams trim chandi muhur akanda yisyataha. O haughty one, you will have two contemptuous sons, born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the three worlds. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Oh, okay.
Mic doesn't work.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. You were, at the beginning of the class, you were saying that one could lose everything if he offends a Vaishnava. How do we practically, in the association of Vaishnavas, how do we not get too familiar, because we're living together and everything? How does one not become too familiar with the Vaishnava so he doesn't make offenses?
Well, most practically is that we have a very important mission that is going on non-stop. Prabhupada liked the motto of the Indian railway system, keep the wheels moving. Thus, they are engaged in missionary activities meant to deliver all the conditioned souls in the material universe. So we could look at Prabhupada said that if you want to know what it means to be a real Goswami, you should chant and meditate on Sad Goswami Astakam. You see the picture of the 6 Goswamis, and you hear their description. They were together very nicely, and they did so many things in cooperation with each other. They scrutinizingly studied all the revealed scriptures. For what? Just like, Hayagriva, he met Prabhupada. Howard Wheeler met Prabhupada. The exact spot, consider it like a holy place, right? between the 2nd Avenue subway and the corner of Bowery and Houston on the north side of the street. You know, you'll bring your friends. So there's a beautiful description in Planting the Seed that this group, you know, they were reading like Franz Kafka, Whitman, and a whole list of all these kind of far out kind of writers, you know, in recent times and not so distant, 100 or 200 years ago. And they were, you know, throwing a little Bible or Lao Tzu or this, that, the other thing. And they would like discuss from different angles of vision. And the whole thing was thrown up for reevaluation when one of them had a new insight on an LSD trip. This was the group that not like that. They, with the aim of course, their idea that with some type of, you know, if you weren't like taking, you know, using LSD as a tool and you weren't living on the Lower East Side, then you weren't taking part in the most progressive expansion of human consciousness taking place on the planet. Noble effort. But the 6 Goswamis, their aim was to establish eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. And at the same time, the 6 Goswamis weren't all like packed up together. They weren't living with each other. In fact, many of them, and this was for the higher purpose, they were given the order to excavate the lost holy places. Rupa Goswami, he had his Bhajan Kutir in Seva Kunj Radha Damodar, yet at the same time, one of his most prominent and main place that he was living was between Nandagram and Varshana, near a place, Sanket, their meeting place, Ter Kadamba, which even to date is very much far removed from, you know, any village or town. Nandagram was far away. And this is where the wonderful story, Prabhupada describes this in his, it's recorded in the summer and fall of 1966, that Sanatan Goswami, who was living at Chakleshwar Mahadev in Govardhan, a considerable distance away, came to visit him, and Sanatan Goswami had an amazing visit from a very beautiful young Brijbasi girl who brought all these ingredients, mysteriously, that he could cook. And ultimately he cooked this unbelievable sweet rice, and when Sanatan Goswami tasted it, he just said, I can't believe this. This tastes like completely out of this world, obviously. And by they discovered that it was Srimati Radharani herself who brought. So the idea is that we cooperate together, but we respect each other by understanding each person's, let's say, we don't say alone time, but their time to be with Krishna. Satsvarup Maharaj made this very wonderful book in 1984 about Radha Damodar called The Worshipful Deity. And he's describing, you know, how we all come together for greeting the deities. Each of us, we join together to see them as community, but each of us is with them alone. That is their mystic art. Prabhupada said, you must stay in this movement, even if it becomes intolerable. There is no alternative. You must stay. You've heard that? Even if it becomes intolerable? I forget who he said that to. And Srila Prabhupada created temple life in such a way that everything is there for everyone to have their needs fulfilled. Because if you're surrendering to Krishna and putting aside your so-called I want and your thought, you know, that surrender is so pleasing to the Lord, especially to Lord Chaitanya, that everything you need and for fulfillment will automatically be taken care of. To those who constantly meditate on my transcendental form, which means engaging in devotional service, practical devotional service. Arjuna wasn't a yogi and a meditator, he was a statesman. Bhishma Dev, his mind was strewn over so many subject matters, yet at the end he concentrated his mind upon Parthasarthi, the beautiful form of Krishna, chariot driver of Arjuna, who personally came standing before him, just like the Lord came before Haridas Thakur. The passing of Haridas Thakur by his own will was just like the passing of Bhishma Dev. Thus we have heard from Shastra. And there are certain modes, methodologies, and sequences that will be appropriate in accord with our stage of life, both with the stage of our physical body and also corresponding to our earned and validified devotional advancement. Is that good? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Abe, Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you for the class. In the report in the class, I was mentioning that we need to have these it says here, the womb was condemned because the mother's being too sexually inclined and thus transgressing all the laws and injunctions of the scriptures. I'm wondering if you, as people who are conditioned souls in this age and they come to the Hare Krishna movement, they might have a child, whereas before they became Krishna conscious. Okay. I'm wondering, is the child doomed if they don't follow the Garbhadava Samskar, or any...
Well, if the child, okay, someone has a child...
But they reform their sexually inclined ways.
I'm trying to understand the question.
Okay.
So someone comes to the movement and they have children. Okay, and now what's the question of those children? Is that what?
Yeah, as they change their ways.
As they grow up?
Yeah, after they have childbirth.
Oh, the person's coming to the movement.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Devotional service is so powerfully purifying that it changes everything. Bonnie McDowell and her then boyfriend, what was his name? Gary McElroy from Austin, Texas, Govindadasi and Gaurasundar. They had thought to go to Haight-Ashbury and find a more progressive way of life, but when they saw it was just a bunch of like drugged out, sexed out, aimless hippies, they were discouraged. And they were very disturbed over many things. Gary in particular, as many young men at the time, the imminent threat of being drafted into the Vietnam War. And they come and they meet Srila Prabhupada in the apartment he was staying on Willard Street. Did you tour the Haight-Ashbury and see 518 Frederick Street when you were there in San Francisco? No? Okay, well, you have to go back and tour it then.
There's no one there to tour.
So, actually, you can look on Google Maps and put 518 Frederick Street. You can see a picture of the building, you know. So, Prabhupada said, you simply come to my classes and everything will be all right. That's it. So Govindadasi said, what, such an unbelievable panacea. Like, that's the solution? That's going to solve all our problems? You come to my classes? But Prabhupada was saying with such love and conviction and with such a beautiful smile on his face, because we believed him and we came. And he also instructed us to read the Bhagavatam. You read the Bhagavatam, the first canto, 3 volumes that Prabhupada brought. You read the Bhagavatam out loud to each other. That was their first instructions. And there's so many statements about the power of hearing and chanting, how it just You simply clap your hands in the kirtan and all the lines on your hands change, your destiny, your... Ashuta Kirti, who spent so much time with Srila Prabhupada as a personal servant, he would chastise you, but when you corrected, even the mistake was very serious, he would never refer to it again, not like rub your face in it. I mean, you did this, or you rascal, you know. No. You do the right thing and move on. How's that? Good. Yes.
So why did Kadama Muni leave home? He's a devotee. Why did he leave home?
That's a very amazing. Actually, that's a question that, and not only leave home, but he has the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his home as his son. And Prabhupada, if I can remember, but you'll see it. Here it is, the whole book, right? Oh no, this is part one. This isn't part two. But this is a very, very good question. And if I could remember, Prabhupada says that because this is the standard of Varnashram life, and to show a proper example. And ultimately that was his desire. He had a little desire for family life, and he set the conditions at the end, that in the beginning, that after quickly he wants to, renouncing this family life, I simply wish to wander about, thinking of you always within my heart. He basically was not to become an itinerant mendicant and organize preaching activities and have many disciples, although he was qualified to do so.
He told Devahuti he would leave after he gave her a son.
Right. But the question, why did he leave? Okay. Anyway, like Nanda Maharaj, the birth of Lord Krishna, he was in an older age, and you see how joyously of course he's in the Vaishya, Sudras and Vaishyas, especially Sudras, there's only one ashram for them, the Grihastha ashram. There's no question of renunciation. But in the case of Nanda Maharaj, the Supreme Person, Krishna directly is his son. There's no question of his leaving home. His home, it says, to gain liberation and such, they're worshiping the Shrutis. As for me, I will simply worship Nanda Maharaj, who the Supreme Absolute Truth is crawling in his yard as a baby. So the position of advanced pure devotional service is so glorious that it actually supersedes or transcends even the Varnashram rules and regulations and recommendations. That's not to be imitated, it's not to be exploited, but it is to be looked at and ultimately worshipped as the highest attainment. That is life in Goloka Vrindavan. All right, so it's 9 o'clock. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Always to Prabhupada. Always to Shishi Radha Govinda. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Bol.
Praise Rama Raya.
Hare Krishna. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.